Let's talk about something that's not just powerful, it's transformational. When a woman focuses on herself and stays silent, everything falls into place. Let me say that again. Everything falls into place. Not because she stopped caring, not because she gave up, but because she decided her peace costs more than proving a point. We live in a world that constantly demands a woman's energy. Be louder. Explain yourself. React, defend, apologize, explain again. But when she chooses silence, that's not weakness. That's mastery. Because focusing on herself doesn't mean she's selfish. It means she's finally pouring into the one person who keeps showing up, herself. And here's the truth. Silence is not the absence of strength, it's evidence of it. When she stops trying to fix everything around her, she starts fixing everything within her. And when that alignment happens, things start moving. The chaos clears, the drama fades, the wrong people walk away, and the right opportunities walk in. So if you're listening to this, and you've been stretching yourself thin, reacting to everyone and everything, try this. Step back, breathe, silence the noise, focus on you. Because when a woman focuses on herself and lets her silence speak, she doesn't chase, she attracts. Start here. Silence isn't weakness. Let that sink in. We've been taught that silence means surrender, that if you don't speak up, you're giving up, that if you don't defend yourself loudly and immediately, people will walk all over you. But let me tell you what's true. Silence, it's not weakness. It's control. It's composure. It's strength wearing a different kind of armor. Because here's what actually takes strength. Biting your tongue when you have every right to say something. Walking away when you know you could win the argument. Choosing your peace over your pride. That takes discipline. That takes mastery. You see, we live in a culture that applauds loudness. Speak first. Be bold. Be louder than the noise. But what they don't tell you is loud isn't always powerful. And silence doesn't mean you're passive. It means you're strategic. Think about it. Anyone can react, but it takes a different level of power to pause, to not let the moment control you. To say, I'm not going to pour my energy into this because not everything deserves my voice. That's real strength. That's internal power. Because it's not about what you can say. It's about what you choose not to. I'm not talking about shrinking. I'm not talking about playing small. This isn't about silencing your truth. It's about protecting your peace. And here's the thing. When a woman steps into that kind of silence, the world doesn't know what to do with her. Because now she's no longer trying to prove herself. She's no longer explaining, no longer defending, no longer reacting. She's not performing anymore. She's choosing her energy. And that's where her power lies. You ever watch someone go completely still in the middle of chaos? They're not panicking. They're not flailing. They're grounded, calm, focused. That's not weakness. That's clarity. That's the storm before the move. That's the look of someone who knows, I don't need to speak on everything. I just need to know who I am. And that right there is the shift. When a woman stops responding just to be understood, when she no longer feels the need to validate herself in someone else's confusion, she wins. Not outwardly, not immediately, but deeply. Because silence isn't just about what's not being said. It's about what's being protected. Her boundaries, her time, her energy, her identity. And listen, people won't always like it. Some will say, you've changed. You're distant. You used to be different. But she's not being distant. She's being selective. She's not being cold. She's being clear. Because when a woman gets tired of wasting words in rooms where no one is listening, she starts saving her breath for places that deserve it. And that's the lesson. Silence is not the absence of fight. It's the presence of wisdom. You're not weaker because you didn't argue back. You're stronger because you didn't let the chaos pull you down to its level. And that choice to stay centered, to stay silent, to stay focused, that's not easy. But that's where everything begins to fall into place. Because when you stop engaging with what doesn't align with your values, your future, or your peace, your path clears, the wrong people walk away, the noise dies down, the right energy starts to move towards you, and suddenly you're not chasing clarity anymore, you're creating it. So if you're in a season where you feel like the silence is uncomfortable, that's okay. Let it stretch you, let it shape you, because you're not retreating, you're reclaiming. And eventually they'll realize She's not silent because she's lost. She's silent because she's done explaining. She's done watering dead plants, done fighting battles that don't matter, done being triggered by chaos that was never hers to fix. She's focused. She's grounded. She's free. And from that place, that calm, quiet, powerful place, she moves differently. No longer proving, no longer defending, no longer exhausting herself trying to be understood in places that prefer her confused. She's not shrinking. She's rising. And her silence, it speaks volumes. Let me make this clear from the start. Focusing on yourself does not make you selfish. It makes you aware. It makes you awake. It makes you whole. Somewhere along the way, society started feeding us this lie, especially to women, that if you take care of yourself first, you're neglecting others, that putting yourself at the top of your priority list means you're cold, arrogant, self-centered. But let's get honest. How can you keep showing up for everyone else when you're drained, overlooked, and running on empty? You can't. Because when you're constantly trying to meet everyone else's needs while ignoring your own, you lose your balance, you lose your spark, you lose. And here's the thing, being needed is not the same as being valued. Sometimes we get stuck in this cycle, this rhythm of overextending ourselves, saying yes when we want to say no, showing up when we're breaking inside, pouring into everyone else's cup while letting ours run dry. That's not sustainable. That's not healthy. That's not love. That's overfunctioning. And over time, it chips away at your spirit. But when a woman finally decides, no more, I'm going to focus on me now, something powerful starts to happen. She stops asking for permission. She stops waiting to be chosen. She stops sacrificing her well-being just to keep the peace. She starts waking up earlier, not because someone else needs her, but because she needs her. She starts listening to her body, resting when it's tired, nourishing it with care, moving it with love. She starts protecting her time, not out of guilt, but out of deep respect for herself. And let me tell you, that kind of focus, that kind of self-investment, it changes everything. Now look, I'm not talking about becoming hardened or shutting everyone out or building walls so high nobody can reach you. I'm talking about alignment. I'm talking about putting yourself back in your own story, not as a side character, not as an afterthought, but as the main character, because you matter, your peace matters, your growth matters, your rest matters. And when you make yourself a priority, you're not just helping yourself, you're modeling what healthy looks like for your kids, for your friends, for your community, for the next version of you. Because if we keep celebrating women only when they're sacrificing, we keep reinforcing the idea that burnout is a badge of honor. It's not. Taking care of yourself is not a luxury, it's a necessity. You can't lead from exhaustion. You can't love from depletion. You can't serve from scarcity. And let me tell you something else. The people who truly value you, they'll never make you feel guilty for growing, for resting, for protecting your energy. If they do, that's not love, that's control. Because real love says, I see you evolving and I'm proud of you. Real love cheers for your boundaries. It doesn't guilt trip them. And here's the truth a lot of people don't want to hear. When you start focusing on yourself, really focusing the people who benefited from your lack of boundaries, they'll fall away. Let them. Because your job is not to carry everyone. Your job is not to over-explain your healing to people who are committed to misunderstanding it. Your job is to come home to yourself. That means checking in with your own needs. That means holding space for your dreams. Not just everybody else's. That means making time to do nothing and not feeling guilty about it. That means honoring the version of you that you keep pushing to the background because life is so loud. Because guess what? You're allowed to rest without earning it. You're allowed to grow without apology. You're allowed to say, right now, I'm choosing me. That's not selfish. That's smart. That's essential. That's strength. So if you're in a place right now where you feel pulled in too many directions, where your worth feels tangled up in how much you do for others, pause, take a breath, take a long look inward. Ask yourself, what would it look like to choose me today? Maybe that means taking the long way home in silence, just to be with your own thoughts. Maybe it means canceling that obligation that's been sitting heavy on your chest. Maybe it means saying no and not following it with a 15-minute explanation. Maybe it means letting people be disappointed and being okay with that. Because here's what no one tells you. Every time you choose yourself, you strengthen your voice, even in silence. Every time you honor your needs, your spirit rises. Every time you focus inward, the world around you begins to shift. And it's not magic, it's intention, it's energy, it's alignment. You don't have to broadcast your glow up. You don't need to post about your peace. Just live it. Let the results speak. Because when a woman focuses on herself, not out of ego, but out of truth, everything around her has no choice but to respond. The noise quiets. The wrong people exit. The path opens. The pressure lifts. So, no, focusing on yourself is not selfish. It's sacred. It's healing. It's wise. And it's time. Time to come back home to your worth. Time to stop feeling guilty for doing what's best for you. Time to realize you are never too much. You are just pouring into the wrong direction. Now you're pouring into you. And that's where everything finally begins to fall into place. You don't owe a reaction to every situation. You just don't. Now, I know that goes against what the world teaches us. We live in a culture that rewards instant responses. Be quick, be loud, be visible, be on all the time. If someone disrespects you, you're supposed to clap back. If someone questions you, you're expected to defend. If someone posts about you, you're pressured to respond immediately. But here's the truth. You're allowed to protect your peace by not responding. Let me say that again. You're allowed to protect your peace by not responding, because not everyone deserves your energy. Not every invitation to argue is worth attending. Not every poke is meant to be answered, and not every mess is yours to clean up. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is nothing at all. And that's not passivity. That's wisdom. That's choosing intention over impulse. That's emotional maturity. That's self-mastery. See, reacting is easy. Anyone can react. It takes no skill to snap back, no growth to match chaos with more chaos. But restraint, that takes something deeper. It takes a woman who knows who she is. A woman who isn't led by emotion, she's led by values. A woman who understands that every time she reacts, she's giving control to something outside of herself. Let's talk about that, because energy is currency, and not everyone deserves to spend yours. And you get to choose what you pour yourself into. You get to decide who gets access to your peace, your presence, your power. So if someone is trying to pull you into drama, you can say nothing. If someone is looking for a fight, you can walk away. If someone is twisting your words, baiting you, trying to provoke you, you can choose silence. And that silence, that's not weakness. That's clarity. That's alignment. That's knowing that your spirit isn't built for constant defense mode, because life isn't a courtroom. You don't have to prove your case every day. You don't have to argue your worth. You don't have to explain your healing. And you sure don't have to respond just to satisfy someone else's chaos. Let's be honest. There will always be someone with an opinion. Always someone with something to say. Always someone looking to challenge your peace. But when you understand that peace is your responsibility, you stop handing it over so easily. You stop defending things that don't need defending. You stop shrinking down just to keep the room calm. You stop bending over backward just to explain decisions you already made with confidence. Because here's what happens when you learn to pause. You create space. You give yourself time to check in, to ask, is this even worth it? Does this align with who I'm becoming? Will this matter tomorrow, a week from now, a year from now? 9 times out of 10, the answer is no. And once you see that, once you recognize how much time and emotional bandwidth you've been spending on people and problems that aren't worth it, you start to change. You start protecting your silence, the way you protect your peace. You start treating your reaction like a gift, not a reflex. And listen, not reacting doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care strategically. It means you're done being pulled in by every emotional tug of war. It means you've grown. You've matured past the point of needing to be right all the time. You've realized that peace is more valuable than victory. And sometimes winning means walking away without saying a word. Sometimes it means letting someone else believe what they want, because your self-worth doesn't hinge on their misunderstanding. Let them think what they want. Let them talk. Let the noise pass. Because when you stay grounded, when you stay still, when you stay focused, you rise. That's the shift. When a woman no longer reacts just to react, When she lets go of the pressure to respond to every jab, every comment, every petty situation, she frees herself. She starts responding to life, not reacting to it. She becomes more centered, more peaceful, more powerful. Because here's the truth that'll change everything for you. You are not obligated to be available for other people's drama. You are not required to explain your boundaries. You are not here to fix what you didn't break. And you are never responsible for how someone chooses to interpret your silence. That's theirs, not yours. You don't owe access to everyone. You don't owe an explanation every time you say no. And you don't owe a reaction, not when you know your value, not when you're focused on healing, not when your peace is finally starting to settle. So the next time you feel the urge to fire back, to jump in, to just say one more thing, pause, breathe. Check in with yourself. Ask, is this worth my energy? Is this really mine to carry? Because not every situation deserves the weight of your spirit. And the most powerful woman in the room, she's the one who doesn't flinch every time she's challenged. She's the one who can hold her peace, even when everything in her wants to respond. She's the one who knows her silence isn't empty. It's full of power, full of clarity, full of strength. Because at the end of the day, when you choose not to react, you stay in control. And that's where everything starts to fall into place. Let's talk about peace, not just the kind that shows up when everything is going right. I'm talking about inner peace, the kind that stays with you even when the world is chaotic, even when people disappoint you, even when nothing is going according to plan. That kind of peace is not a coincidence. It's not something that just falls into your lap. It's something you build. You earn it through intention, through self-awareness, through letting go of the things that used to keep you spinning. Because there comes a moment where you stop chasing validation, drama, noise, and you start craving calm. Not temporary relief, not distraction, but real calm, the kind that sinks into your bones and makes you breathe a little deeper. You get tired of living in reaction mode, tired of being on edge, tired of constantly giving and forgetting yourself in the process. And that's when the shift begins. You start building your life differently. You stop basing decisions on urgency and start basing them on alignment. You stop going where you're tolerated, start going where your peace is protected. You stop letting people rent space in your head for free. You begin filtering everything, every relationship, every opportunity, every conversation through one simple lens. Does this protect or disturb my peace? And if the answer is the latter, you let it go. No big speech, no dramatic exit. Just a quiet decision to no longer give energy to what doesn't serve you. That's when peace becomes your new standard. And let me tell you something, not everyone will like this version of you, because the version of you that's chasing peace, she's quieter, she's more selective. She's no longer explaining herself. She doesn't engage in petty conversations. She doesn't go back and forth just to keep the connection. She's not interested in proving herself anymore. And because of that, some people will say you've changed. Yes, you have. You've evolved. You've outgrown chaos disguised as connection. You've outgrown relationships built on guilt and obligation. You've outgrown living in survival mode. And now you choose peace over everything. Not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. Because once you've tasted true peace, not numbness, not detachment, but actual calm, you can't go back to a life that threatens it. You stop engaging with people who confuse dysfunction for depth. You stop explaining your boundaries to people who were never planning to respect them. You stop entertaining the idea that your worth depends on how much you do, how available you are, how agreeable you seem. Peace teaches you a different language. It teaches you that rest is not laziness. That saying no is a complete sentence. That not everything requires a response. That joy isn't found in noise, it's found in stillness. And when that becomes your new standard, life looks different. You wake up differently. You move slower, but with purpose. You listen more, talk less. You observe, you discern, you respond when necessary, but never just to fill the space. You start seeing red flags the first time, not the fifth. You stop waiting for closure from people who never gave you clarity to begin with. You let people go, not because you're bitter, but because they disrupt what you're building now. See, when peace is your standard, you don't settle, not in love, not in friendship, not in how you treat yourself. You raise the bar, not just for others, but for yourself. You stop overcommitting. You stop apologizing for resting. You stop putting yourself last on your own to-do list. Because you know this now. A woman in her peace is a woman in her power. She's no longer living to survive the day. She's living to protect the life she's intentionally building. Ensure that life might be quieter, smaller circle, less chaos, but it's full of what actually matters. Peace doesn't mean the absence of problems. It means you're not letting those problems define your mood, your mind, or your next move. It means you've got a new filter now. Anything that costs your peace, it's too expensive. And you don't argue about that anymore. You don't defend it. You just live it. That's the shift. It's not loud. It's not flashy. It's subtle, internal, and deeply felt. Because you're no longer waiting for peace to show up after the storm. You are the peace. You bring it with you. You protect it fiercely. And you walk away from anything that threatens it, no matter how familiar it once was. That's what it means to evolve. That's what it means to set a new standard. And when you hold that standard, everything starts to change. The way you speak to yourself, the way you let people speak to you, the way you navigate life with clarity instead of confusion, you become anchored, grounded, unshaken. Not because life stopped being hard, but because you stopped letting it steal your peace. That's power. That's emotional maturity. That's when everything quietly, gently, and without force begins to fall into place. Silence. It used to make you uncomfortable, didn't it? It used to feel like something was wrong if things got too quiet. You'd rush to fill the space, to explain, to overexpress, to apologize, to make sure everyone knew your heart. And while your intentions were pure, there was a cost. That kind of constant availability, constant explaining, constant defending, it's exhausting. And here's what they don't tell you. When you're always rushing to speak, to clarify, to calm the room, you teach people that you'll always be the one to hold the emotional weight. But silence, real, intentional silence, isn't a weakness. It's a boundary. It's strength. It says, without raising your voice, I don't owe you my energy. It says, I know who I am, and I don't need to prove it right now. It says, you don't get to pull me into your storm. I'm staying rooted in my peace. Because silence, when used with wisdom, is one of the most powerful tools you have. And the moment you stop using it out of fear and start using it as a form of clarity, you change the way you navigate everything. Now, let's be honest. At first, silence can feel heavy, like avoidance, like punishment, like defeat, especially if you grew up or lived in environments where silence meant disconnection or tension or rejection. But the kind of silence we're talking about here, it's none of that. This silence isn't passive. It's intentional. It's chosen. It's protective. It's healing. It means you're no longer entertaining conversations that drain you. You're no longer validating people with explanations they haven't earned. You're no longer reacting just because someone expects a response. You've grown past that now. Because when a woman learns the value of her voice, she also learns the value of when not to use it. Not out of submission, but out of discernment. You see, silence becomes a boundary when it's used to protect your energy. You're not ghosting. You're not punishing. You're not playing games. You're simply choosing not to let everyone in. Because not everyone deserves a front row seat to your emotions. Not everyone gets a backstage pass to your thought process. Not everyone is entitled to your reactions, your process, your peace. That's sacred space. And your silence, it creates a barrier between what's sacred and what's reckless. Because let's be real, some people don't want resolution. They want control. They want to poke, provoke, and pull you back into patterns you've already outgrown. They don't want clarity. They want access. And when you stop giving them that, they'll call you cold. They'll say, you've changed. They might even accuse you of being too quiet or acting different. That's okay. Let them talk. Because your silence isn't for them. It's for you. It's for your future, your growth, your alignment. It's a statement that says, I'm not engaging just to keep you comfortable. I'm not explaining just to ease your guilt. I'm not breaking my peace just to be understood. You're not being rude. You're being wise. You're listening more than you're reacting. You're observing before you speak. You're holding back, not out of fear, but because your peace has become too expensive to spend on every little thing. Now, will some people misunderstand that? Yes. Well, some assume silence means weakness every time, but you don't owe them your side of the story. You don't owe them your why. You owe yourself peace. And real peace often requires less talking and more choosing. Choosing what deserves your voice and what doesn't. Choosing what gets your attention and what gets your distance. Choosing what gets your explanation and what gets your silence. Because silence can say, I see this for what it is and I won't participate. It can say, this is no longer mine to fix, carry, or explain. It can say, I've healed too much to go back there. And the most powerful part, you don't have to raise your voice. You don't have to prove your point. You don't have to beg someone to understand. You just let the silence speak. You let your energy speak. You let your growth speak. Because the right people, they won't need you to over-explain. They won't take your quiet as a threat. They'll see it for what it is, a boundary, a sign that you are protecting something sacred. Your mind, your spirit, your next chapter, that's where the power is. That's what maturity looks like. Knowing when to speak and when to simply be still. You're no longer chasing resolution with people who prefer confusion. You're no longer inserting yourself into every misunderstanding. You're no longer lowering your peace just to meet someone's expectation of who you used to be. You've evolved. And with that evolution comes the understanding that your silence is no longer a void. It's a decision. It's not weakness. It's wisdom. And when you learn to stand in that quiet place, confident, grounded, unapologetic, everything around you starts to shift. The wrong people fall away. The noise begins to fade. And in the stillness, you find yourself not the version that performs, not the version that pleases, not the version that panics, but the version that knows, I don't have to explain myself to be valid. I don't have to speak to be strong. I don't have to respond to be right. Because my silence is the response. And that's when everything begins to fall into place. There comes a moment when you get tired of the act, tired of adjusting, tired of shrinking, tired of walking into rooms and calculating how much of yourself to show. Because for too long, you've been performing strength when you're tired, performing confidence when you're unsure, performing peace when your heart is screaming for rest. And maybe you didn't even notice at first. Maybe it started subtly, a little people-pleasing here, a little overcompensating there, trying to keep the peace, trying to be liked, trying to belong. And before you knew it, your days started feeling like stages. You were on all the time, smiling when you didn't want to, agreeing when you felt tension, showing up when you needed space, giving when your cup was already empty. But at some point, that performance catches up with you because pretending is heavy and performing will eventually steal the joy out of your life. That's when the shift happens. Not all at once, not with fireworks, but slowly, quietly, honestly. You stop performing and you start living. You start choosing peace over perfection, rest over image, authenticity over approval, because you finally had enough of trying to live up to standards that weren't even yours to begin with. You realize it's not your job to make everyone comfortable. It's not your purpose to play small for the sake of harmony. And it's not your calling to be what people expect at the cost of who you really are. Then that's the turning point. That's when you begin to come home to yourself. You start checking in with your own voice, not just reacting to everyone else's. You start asking, what do I need, before asking, what do they want from me? And you stop performing strength because now you understand real strength is being honest. Real strength is knowing when to say no. It's knowing when to step back. It's knowing when to admit you're not okay and not needing that to be fixed or filtered. You don't need to impress anymore. You don't need to over-explain anymore. You don't need to be everything to everyone anymore. You just need to be you and let that be enough. Let's be real for a moment. Living authentically doesn't mean life gets easier. Sometimes it gets more uncomfortable at first. Because when you stop performing, people notice. Some will feel confused. Some will feel disappointed. Some might even accuse you of being different. And they're right. You are different. You're no longer running yourself into the ground just to feel valuable. You're no longer accepting roles in other people's stories that keep you stuck. You're no longer making yourself small so others can feel big. You're living now, not existing. not performing, living. You're waking up and asking, what feels right today? What brings me peace today? What do I want to say or not say today? And for the first time in a long time, your decisions don't come from fear. They come from freedom. You get to say no without guilt. You get to say yes without explanation. You get to rest without apologizing for it. Because living authentically isn't about chaos or rebellion. It's about alignment. It's about looking in the mirror and recognizing the woman looking back at you. Not the version people told you to be. Not the version that only shows up online. Not the version that overperforms just to feel seen. But you, the woman who's soft where she used to be guarded. The woman who's firm where she used to bend too far. The woman who's honest about her limits and loyal to her boundaries. You stop performing, and that means everything about your world begins to change. You don't fake friendships anymore. You don't force conversations that drain you. You don't fake laugh just to keep someone comfortable. You say less, but you mean more. You show up less often, but you show up fully. You don't carry guilt for being misunderstood because peace means more to you than being liked. That's the difference between performing and living. One is external, chasing applause, approval, attention. The other is internal, anchored in peace, purpose, and presence. And you know what else happens when you stop performing? Your body relaxes. Your mind slows down. You sleep better. You breathe deeper because you're no longer bracing yourself for the next demand. You're no longer tense from holding back who you are. You're no longer exhausted by trying to keep up with what the world says you should be. And the best part? The people who matter the most, the ones who really see you, they don't need the performance anyway. They don't need the polished version. They don't need the curated version. They just want you, the real you. And when you show up as that woman, the one who chooses peace, who speaks from clarity, who acts from alignment, everything around you starts to match that energy. You attract better. You respond better. You live better. Because now you're not just going through the motions. You're not waiting for the weekend. You're not performing joy. You're living it. So take a deep breath. Feel that? That's what it's like when you stop performing. When you stop trying to meet expectations that never fit you anyway. When you stop editing yourself in every room just to stay accepted. You don't need to act anymore. You just need to be. That's where your power is. That's where your peace is. And that's where your real life begins. And once you taste that, you won't ever go back. It's funny how the world shifts when you stop chasing noise. When you stop chasing attention, stop chasing validation, stop trying to be everywhere for everyone all the time. See, for a long time, noise felt like connection. The constant texting, the likes, the comments, the invites, the updates, the busyness. It made you feel seen. It made you feel included. But deep down, it never made you feel known. And that's the difference. Because noise isn't depth. Noise is distraction dressed up as importance. Then when a woman decides she's done with the performance, done with proving, done with pleasing, she naturally starts turning the volume down on all that noise. She doesn't even have to announce it. She just moves differently. More stillness, more clarity, more choosing herself. And that shift, it creates space. Space for peace, space for reflection, space for substance. Because once you stop making yourself available to the chaos stops calling. The drama fades. The one-sided conversations die out. The situations lose their grip. The friendships built on convenience start to wither. And it's not that you suddenly became cold or closed off. It's that you started choosing quality over quantity. You started choosing substance over stimulation. That's the mark of emotional maturity, when you stop needing constant engagement and start seeking meaningful connection. You no longer need to be invited to every room. You no longer fear missing out. You no longer feel the urge to explain your every move, because your world is no longer loud, it's solid. See, noise begs for attention, but substance waits to be earned. And you, the version of you that's grounded, healed, intentional, you're no longer attracted to what sparkles if it doesn't shine from within. You're not impressed by fast talk, not moved by surface level charm, not interested in what looks good but feels wrong, because you've been through enough to know not everything that glitters is gold. Now, you want real conversations, real connection, real respect, You're not chasing people. You're watching how they show up. You're not begging for time. You're watching where they prioritize you. You're not reacting to every word. You're listening to the patterns. Because substance speaks for itself. And when you raise your standard, when you start saying no to what drains you, the universe listens. You stop attracting people who only want your energy and start attracting those who value your presence. You stop drawing in chaos and start making room for consistency. You stop tolerating the bare minimum and start walking with people who give without keeping score. But here's the catch. Before you attract substance externally, you've got to build it internally. That means getting honest about the noise inside you too. The overthinking, the self-doubt, the comparison, the habits that keep you stuck. You learn to quiet those voices. You learn to question them. You learn to replace them with truth, not just comfort. Because substance isn't just about what surrounds you, it's about what anchors you. It's the peace you carry into a room, the way you pause before reacting, the way you know when to speak and when silence is enough. It's in your boundaries, your values, your stillness. And once you get there, once you really get there, you become unavailable for anything that feels shallow, inconsistent, or misaligned. You don't announce it. You just stop picking up the phone for chaos. You stop chasing connections that make you question your worth. You stop entertaining relationships that need constant repair but offer no foundation. And you start attracting what matches the work you've done. You start drawing in people who are safe, not perfect, but emotionally honest, not flawless, but consistent, not overwhelming, but present. You attract fewer people, but deeper ones, the kind that ask how you're really doing, the kind that don't disappear when you're no longer convenient. The kind that don't need to be impressed, just included. Because that's what happens when a woman focuses on herself and stays silent. She doesn't just become stronger, she becomes clearer. Clearer about what she needs. Clearer about what she won't tolerate. Clearer about the kind of energy she allows into her life. And when you get clear, you become a magnet for clarity. You stop entertaining people who speak in confusion and half-truths. You stop giving energy to situations that make you question your intuition. You stop explaining your boundaries to people who were never planning to honor them anyway, because you've made peace your baseline now. You've made discernment your compass. You've made emotional maturity your default. And here's the thing, when you stop performing for the crowd disappears. But in its place, you find your people, the real ones, the ones who see the quiet in you and respect it, the ones who don't need you to explain your value. They just feel it. The ones who bring substance, not just noise. And when you live like that, you don't feel empty when your phone's quiet. You don't feel anxious when you're not being seen. You don't feel irrelevant when you step back because you're no longer connected to the noise. You're connected to truth, and truth doesn't shout. It doesn't scramble. It doesn't compete. It just stands, steady, rooted, unbothered. So when you notice your circle shrinking, when the texts slow down, when your calendar opens up, don't panic. That's not rejection. That's realignment. You're not losing connection. You're making room for substance. And in that space, everything good has a chance to grow. Peace is one of those things you don't truly value until you lose it. It's easy to overlook when your life is full of distractions, when your phone never stops buzzing, when you're constantly responding to other people's needs, moods, expectations. But once you taste real peace deep, internal unshakable peace, you start to protect it like it's sacred. Because it is. It's not just the absence of chaos. It's not just silence or stillness. Peace is presence. It's knowing who you are. It's trusting your choices. It's walking into a room and not needing to prove a thing. And when you finally reach that place, something inside you shifts. You don't just want peace, you prioritize it. You guard it. You build your boundaries around it. You make decisions with it in mind. That's not selfish. That's maturity. That's you saying, I will not trade my peace for momentary validation. I will not trade it for temporary attention, for forced conversation, for people who drain me but never pour into me. Because peace isn't passive, it's active. It's choosing not to respond to every comment, not attending every argument you're invited to, not letting your energy be dictated by someone else's dysfunction. And protecting your peace isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just a quiet, no thank you. A gentle, not today. A firm, I've said all I need to say. It's turning your phone off for the day. It's leaving the group chat on read. It's staying home when your soul needs rest, even if you're expected to show up. Protecting your peace means you stop justifying yourself. You stop explaining your boundaries to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You stop giving multiple chances to those who keep choosing chaos. Because here's the truth, not everyone deserves access to the calm you've built. Not everyone should have a seat at your table. Not everyone should be able to speak into your life. And when a woman realizes that, when she learns that peace isn't just a luxury, but a non-negotiable, her entire life begins to align. She starts walking differently, speaking differently, choosing differently. She's no longer reactive. She's reflective. She's no longer hustling to keep people close. She's observing who steps back when she no longer overextends, because peace has taught her what she'll no longer compromise for connection. And the moment you start protecting your peace like that, some people will fall away. Let them. You don't lose anything real by prioritizing your well-being. You don't lose your tribe when you choose truth. You lose the noise pretending to be your tribe. And yes, it may feel lonely at first, quiet, unfamiliar, but that's how peace feels in the beginning, like empty space, until that space gets filled with real things, with clarity, with ease, with purpose, with people who don't drain you. Because peace has a frequency, and when you start living at that frequency, people who live in chaos can't stay long. They'll either rise to meet you, or they'll remove themselves. Either way, you don't have to chase. You don't have to convince. You don't have to explain. You just keep choosing what aligns. Peace isn't a mood. It's not a weekend escape. It's not something you wait for. It's something you create. Every time you say no to what disrupts your nervous system, every time you give yourself permission to rest, every time you stop rehearsing what you should have said and start focusing on where you're going next, peace is a choice. And the more you choose it, the more you realize how sacred it really is. It's sacred because you fought to find it. You went through chaos to get here. You've cried through seasons just to learn how to be still. You've been in rooms that drained you so you could recognize the rooms that heal you. So no, you don't just give that away. You don't hand over your peace to people who haven't earned your trust. You don't sacrifice your calm just to keep someone comfortable. You don't minimize your growth just to avoid discomfort. You've learned the hard way that peace costs something, and you're finally willing to pay the price to protect it. Sometimes that price is distance. Sometimes it's silence. Sometimes it's walking away when you'd rather stay and explain. But you choose it anyway, because when a woman protects her peace, everything about her posture changes. She's not tense. She's not hurried. She's not always on edge. She's steady. She knows where her energy goes. She knows who gets access. She knows that sometimes the strongest move is to simply not engage. And when someone tries to disrupt that, she doesn't panic. She doesn't argue. She doesn't beg. She just leaves. Not from a place of anger, but from a place of protection. Because peace doesn't need to prove itself. It just is. It's the quiet after the storm. It's the pause before the decision. It's the exhale after the years of holding your breath. And now that peace belongs to you. It's yours to protect. Yours to preserve, yours to prioritize. So if someone calls you distant, cold, too quiet, too removed, let them. They don't understand the value of what you're guarding. They don't know what it costs you to get here, but you do. And that's enough. Because once you start protecting your peace like it's sacred, you stop chasing things that threaten it. You stop performing, stop pretending, stop pleasing. You live fully, calmly, freely. And that's the version of you that everything starts falling into place for. There's a difference between urgency and intention. Urgency says, hurry up or you'll miss out. Intention says, move when you're ready. Urgency screams. Intention whispers. And when a woman stops performing, when she steps back from the noise and focuses on herself, she begins to feel that difference. Because urgency is what the world runs on. Deadlines, pressure, comparison, panic. Always one step behind, never feeling caught up. And that urgency, it creates a false sense of importance. You feel like if you don't respond immediately, you're falling behind. If you don't say yes right away, you're being difficult. If you don't show up for everyone else's needs, you're selfish. So you rush, you react, you overcommit, you override your gut, And by the end of the day, you don't even remember what you wanted, only what was expected of you. That's the danger of living in urgency. It disconnects you from yourself. But intention, that's different. Intention is quiet. Intention is calm. Intention pauses. It doesn't need to be the first. It needs to be right. It doesn't rush to please. It chooses with clarity. And when a woman starts living with intention instead of urgency, her entire life begins to shift. She doesn't answer every text immediately because she values presence over performance. She doesn't commit to things in the moment because she gives herself time to feel, to discern. She doesn't explain her every boundary because she trusts herself to make wise, quiet decisions. She's no longer led by guilt or fear. She's led by alignment. You see, urgency often comes from a wounded place. A place that says, if I don't say yes, they'll leave. If I don't speak now, I won't be heard. If I don't rush this decision, I'll miss the opportunity. But when you heal, when you slow down, when you stop chasing validation and start standing in your own authority, you realize you don't need to operate from panic anymore. You can wait. You can pause. You can take a beat and say, let me get back to you. Because nothing healthy requires you to betray yourself to keep it. The right people, the right spaces, the right opportunities, they'll wait for your thoughtful, intentional yes. Not your hurried, afraid to disappoint. Okay, that's what changes when you stop performing and start living. You no longer rush into relationships out of loneliness. You no longer jump into commitments out of fear. You no longer engage in conversations that serve no purpose but to trigger you. You live with intention. You ask yourself, is this in alignment with my peace? Is this in service of the woman I'm becoming? Am I saying yes because it's true or because I'm afraid to say no? And when your answers are rooted in clarity, not anxiety, you know you've stepped into intention. Urgency will have you constantly questioning. Intention helps you trust yourself. And let's be honest, living with intention doesn't mean you move slow. It just means you move on purpose. Every choice, every yes, every no comes from a centered place. You stop apologizing for taking time to think. You stop feeling guilty for not being instantly available. You stop letting other people's timelines dictate your peace, because now your inner world leads the outer one. That changes how you communicate. You stop talking to be heard and start speaking to be understood. You stop defending your choices and start explaining them with calm confidence, if you explain them at all. You stop over-explaining, period. Because intention carries weight. It doesn't demand attention. It earns respect, quietly. You also start showing up differently. You don't rush to fix people. You don't jump into fixing situations. You know when to pause, when to breathe, when to sit in the discomfort instead of reacting to it. That's emotional maturity. And you earn that when you learn to wait, to feel before you act, to think before you reply, to notice the energy behind your impulse. Then ask yourself, is this urgency or is this truth? That question alone can change your life, because the world will try to keep you running. Scrolling, comparing, performing, reacting. It thrives on your hurry. But peace comes when you slow down. When you say, I don't need to make this decision today. I don't need to rush this text. I don't need to be everywhere for everyone. You don't need to prove anything. You just need to stay in alignment with your values. That's the new rhythm. Not hustle, not grind, not pressure, just presence. And people will notice that shift in you. They'll feel the difference. Because a woman who moves with intention isn't easily swayed. She's not pulled into gossip. She's not baited into arguments. She's not reactive to every energy that enters the room. She's grounded, rooted, steady. And that steadiness, it's powerful. Not flashy, not loud, but real. You can build a life on that. So when you feel the old urge creeping back in, when you feel the rush, the pressure, the pull to decide right now, fix right now, answer right now, pause, take a breath. Ask yourself, is this urgency or is this truth? Because urgency often comes from a place of fear, but intention always comes from a place of peace. And when you choose peace, everything that belongs to you will meet you there without force, without confusion, without hurry. That's when life starts falling into place. Not because you hustled harder, but because you finally moved in alignment with who you really are. There's a moment, often quiet and unnoticed by the world, when a woman realizes she's done chasing She's done chasing approval, done chasing attention, done chasing people who only show up halfway, done chasing versions of herself that were designed to make others comfortable. That's when she begins to lead, not with control, not with ego, not with noise, but with presence, with self-respect, with clarity. And that shift changes everything because chasing is exhausting. You know this. Chasing is about catching. Chasing is about proving. Chasing is about constantly monitoring what other people think, how they feel, what they want, so you can adjust and mold yourself to be what they need. It's being 10 steps ahead and still behind at the same time. It's texting first every time. It's initiating, following up, apologizing when you didn't even do anything wrong. It's bending so far to accommodate others that you forget how to stand on your own. And what do you get in return? Temporary affection, conditional acceptance, people who love your performance, but never really know your person. That's the cost of chasing. But leadership is rooted in ownership, not over others, but over yourself. It's when you start living like you are the main character in your life, not as a performance, but as a quiet truth. You stop asking for permission to be who you are. You stop making your decisions based on what will keep others from leaving. You stop fearing distance, silence, solitude, because those things have become your allies, not your enemies. And here's the beauty of it. When you lead yourself, you stop needing to be led by others' expectations. You trust your inner voice more than external opinions. You don't move based on fear. You move based on values. That's real power, and it doesn't have to announce itself. Because when you're done chasing, you don't need to explain your pace to anyone. You're not trying to catch up. You're moving in alignment. And alignment feels steady, even if it's slow, even if it's quiet, even if no one claps for it. You're no longer seeking applause. You're listening to peace. And when you start leading your life this way, people respond to you differently because the energy shifts. You're no longer chasing connection. You're creating it. You're no longer hoping someone chooses you. You're choosing yourself first. You're no longer managing their comfort. You're honoring your truth. And when people don't meet you where you are, you let them go. With grace, not anger. With calm, not chaos. With clarity, not confusion. Because you finally understand not everyone is meant to walk with you. Not every situation is meant to stay. Not every opportunity is meant to be chased. You lead and what's meant for you finds you. Not because you sat still, but because you stood firm. Now, leadership in this context isn't about dominance. It's about alignment. It's about being the kind of woman who walks into a room and doesn't need to be the loudest to be respected. She carries peace, not performance. She doesn't chase closure. She gives it to herself. She doesn't seek validation. She already knows her value. This kind of leadership creates boundaries, real ones. Not the kind you post online, but don't enforce. The kind that quietly protects your peace, your time, your energy. And you don't have to raise your voice to make those boundaries clear. You just live by them. People learn by how you live, not just what you say. When you lead yourself, you stop explaining your standards and start embodying them. That changes how you show up in relationships. You stop trying to be chosen. You stop shrinking to fit into someone else's vision. You stop saying, maybe if I'm more of this or less of that. No. You stand in the fullness of who you are, and you invite others to rise to meet you. And if they don't, you don't chase, because you've learned chasing creates temporary connection, but leadership creates lasting alignment. And that alignment doesn't always mean more. It means real, fewer relationships, but healthier ones. Less conversation, but more truth. Less explaining, more understanding. You're no longer interested in convincing anyone of your worth. You're interested in attracting those who already see it. That's the shift from chasing to leading. And yes, it takes practice. It takes awareness. It takes you being honest with yourself about where in your life you've been begging, when you should have been building. Begging for clarity, begging for consistency, begging for the bare minimum, disguised as connection. That version of you was doing her best. Let her go with love. Now step into the woman who leads, not because she has it all figured out, not because she's better than anyone else, But because she's finally realized chasing will always cost you your peace, and peace is too expensive to trade for attention. So you lead with compassion, with grace, with a quiet, unshakable knowing. You speak when it matters. You act when it's right. You walk away when it's time, not because you're trying to prove something, but because you no longer need to prove anything. That's what it means to lead, not chase. And when you live from that space, everything begins to find you because you finally found yourself. There's something powerful about the woman who doesn't need to say much, that still shifts the room when she enters it. She's not loud. She's not trying to take up space. She doesn't walk in demanding attention. But still, people notice because she carries something most people are still searching for: peace, self-awareness, and presence. And that's the thing about real influence. It's not always in what you say. It's in who you are. It's in the way you carry yourself, the way you respond instead of react, the way you choose silence when chaos invites you to scream. It's the pause before speaking, the deep breath instead of the knee-jerk reaction, the steady no without apology or explanation. That's how you begin to aspire without ever needing to perform. Because here's what most people don't realize. True inspiration doesn't come from having the perfect words. It comes from living with such quiet integrity that your being does the speaking for you. And when a woman focuses on herself, when she stops chasing, performing, or proving her presence, begins to speak louder than her voice ever could. She's no longer trying to get people to understand her. She's just living in alignment. She's just showing up as herself. She's just doing the inner work, and that work shows. It shows in her choices. It shows in her peace. It shows in the way she no longer explains her growth to people who preferred her broken. And that kind of woman, she becomes magnetic, not because she's flashy, but because she's real. And people can feel real. You don't have to announce your boundaries. They can feel them. You don't have to say, I'm different now. They can see it. You don't have to tell them you're healing. They'll sense it in the way you stop chasing closure and start choosing peace. You inspire by simply living what others are still learning, by showing that it's possible to walk away calmly, that it's okay to say no without guilt. That peace is more powerful than proving your point. It's the energy of, I don't need to convince you. I just need to be clear within myself. You inspire in the way you don't force connections anymore, in the way you let people misunderstand you without needing to correct them, in the way you stop participating in cycles you've already outgrown. Because that silence, it's not weakness. It's restraint. It's maturity. It's strength under control. And yes, some people will misread that silence. They'll call it cold, distant, uncaring. They don't realize you're finally choosing yourself over your need to be understood. And in a world that profits off women doubting themselves, the most radical thing you can do is stand in quiet confidence, to no longer outsource your worth to who texts back, to no longer wait for someone else to tell you who you are, to no longer fill silence with self-abandonment. Because silence, when it's chosen, is powerful. It says, I trust myself. It says, I don't owe access to everyone. It says, I'm no longer entertaining what doesn't align. That is inspiring. And here's what else happens. People start to shift around you. Not because you told them to, but because your example challenged them. Because your peace made their chaos feel loud. Because your self-respect made their manipulation ineffective. You're not forcing change. You're modeling it. And that modeling, it's contagious. It gives others permission to stop performing too. To rest, to heal, to breathe. You start influencing without even meaning to, just by being who you are. That's the kind of inspiration that sticks. Not the performative kind. Not the kind that's based on image or attention, but the kind rooted in character, in depth, in truth. And truth doesn't need an audience to be powerful. It just needs to be lived. So no, you don't have to speak to prove your growth. Your life does that for you. In how you set boundaries, in how you protect your peace, in how you no longer chase things that disrupt your nervous system. You don't have to clap back. You don't have to post every realization. You don't have to share every win. You just keep living aligned. And here's the beautiful part. The people who are meant for you, they'll feel that. They'll respect that. They won't need the performance. They'll love the presence because they see what you're building, not just outside, but within. So, yes, you'll start inspiring others, but not because you tried to, because you became someone worth watching, because you became someone who leads with stillness, because you stopped performing and started embodying. That's real power, quiet, grounded, sustainable. The kind of power that doesn't need attention, it holds attention because it's rare. And people don't forget, rare. So let the silence speak. Let your presence be the message. Let your peace be the loudest thing in the room. You don't have to raise your voice to be heard. You just have to know who you are and walk like it. You know, there comes a moment in your life, usually after enough disappointment, noise, burnout, heartbreak, when you realize you've been living backward. You've been living from the outside in. Let me explain. Outside in living looks like trying to shape your inner peace based on external approval, trying to feel confident only when you're complimented, trying to feel secure only when someone stays, trying to feel worthy only when you're achieving. You wait for the world to tell you who you are. And the problem is, it never really does, because the world's voice changes. People shift. One day you're praised, the next you're forgotten. One moment you're loved, the next you're questioned. And if your worth is tied to all of that, you'll always feel uncertain. That's what outside in living costs you. Stability, identity, peace. But when a woman gets quiet, when she slows down, when she stops performing and starts focusing, she starts reversing that direction. She learns to live from the inside out. And that changes everything, because now she's not waiting for confirmation from the outside world. She's already clear on the inside. She knows who she is before anyone offers their opinion. She knows what she values before someone tempts her out of alignment. She knows what peace feels like, so she doesn't trade it for temporary connection. This shift from outside in to inside out is where real power lives, because it's internal. It's not about the brand. It's not about the applause. It's not about the image. It's about being the same woman in every room, with or without attention. It's about knowing your values when no one's watching. It's about acting with integrity, even when it's inconvenient. It's about living in a way that your heart can be proud of, even if nobody ever says, "Good job." That's inside out living. You set your standards based on peace, not pressure. You make decisions based on alignment, not urgency. You speak from clarity, not reaction. And you stop waiting for people to make you feel something you've learned to give yourself. Security, validation, affection, encouragement. You learn how to fill your own cup, not from ego, but from ownership. And that ownership, it's calm, it's not defensive, it's consistent, it's not performative, it's real, it's not loud. Because when you live from the inside out, you're not trying to manipulate the outcome, you're just honoring the process. You stop asking, will they like me? You start asking, will this honor the woman I'm becoming? You stop measuring your growth by how others respond. You measure it by how you feel when you're alone with your decisions. That's deep growth. And it doesn't always look impressive to the outside world. Sometimes it looks like saying no to a relationship that would have made you feel wanted but not respected. Sometimes it looks like leaving a room that made you feel praised but not safe. Sometimes it looks like holding your boundary when silence feels easier, but your soul needs you to speak. It's not glamorous, but it's honest. And honesty with yourself is what builds trust. See, most of us are taught to manage how we're seen, to polish, to package, to perform. But no one teaches you how to sit with yourself, to listen to your gut, to befriend your own heart, to get quiet enough that the outside voices fade and you finally hear your own. That's where the shift happens. When you stop asking everyone else what to do and you start asking yourself, not from fear, not from reactivity, but from grounded awareness. Does this serve me? Does this align with my truth? Can I live with this decision and still respect myself? That's inside out living. And when you build your life on that foundation, what happens? You stop chasing validation. You stop explaining your value. You stop molding your life into something that just looks good, and instead you start building something that feels good. Quiet mornings instead of constant hustle. Real friendships over loud popularity. Emotional depth instead of surface approval. You move different. And people feel that because you're not reacting, you're choosing. You're not proving you're standing. You're not waiting. You're leading yourself. And when challenges come, as they always do, you don't crumble because your worth isn't based on who agrees with you. It's rooted in who you know you are. That's where your peace lives. Not out there in here, not in their praise, in your presence, not in attention, in alignment. And when you get that, when you live that, you become free, not because everything is perfect, but because you're finally not dependent on anything outside of you to feel whole. You're no longer asking people to give what you've already given yourself. Love, respect, stability, peace. You walk into rooms with clarity. You walk away from chaos without drama. You walk through life guided, not pushed. That's what happens when a woman lives from the inside out. She doesn't need to chase. She doesn't need to defend. She doesn't need to perform. She just is. And that energy, it shifts everything because now her life falls into place. Not because she controlled it, but because she finally let her inner world lead. No more waiting, no more begging, no more bending, just calm decisions, rooted boundaries, quiet joy. Not because she found it out there, but because she discovered it in here. And once you found that, you never go back.